Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Belgian Football Podcast. My name's Scott Coyne. I'll be your host for this episode. And joining me to review the week in Belgian football, Matchday 21 in the Pro League, Matchday 17 in the Challenger Pro League, is our very own Joris Beck. Joris, how are you? How has your week and a half been? And where would you like to start?
Well, we always start where we start, but I don't have a say in that. No, man, I had a good time. Had a good start of the year, and yeah, now glad that Belgian football is really back in full swing.
It is indeed. We're back for the second half of the season. The short winter break, such as it is over. Although the winter itself isn't, Joris, because it put pay to a few games this weekend, mainly in the Challenger Pro League, of course. But yes, we're back for the second half of the season and raring to go. And we're going to start where we always do, a little score roundup on Matchday 21. Standard Liège beat Kortrijk 1-0. Westerlo lost 2-1 to St. Truden. Joris's side Genk beat Leuven 2-0. Charleroi lost 2-1 to Union Saint-Gilloise. Beerschot and Antwerp finished 1 each in the big Antwerp derby. Dender and Ghent finished 0-0. Anderlecht and Club Brugge finished 3-0 to Club Brugge. And Cercle Brugge managed to beat Mechelen 1-0. So why don't we head to Liège and Sclesien first, Joris, for a pretty unremarkable game. Not too much to say about this one. Standard managing to get it over the line just without playing particularly well again. Their first one, I think, since the end of November.
Yep, they indeed bridged their this winless December. Eckert Ayensa also scoring his first goal in 3 months and 9 games. That's a boost for him, I'm sure, as shabby as the goal might have been. But nonetheless, that's definitely something to take for them. They still, I believe there are 13 goals now in total, and they are still in there somehow. Well, still, everything switches so easily. One win takes them from having a little worry about getting dragged into the relegation battle, or at least the relegation playoff battle, to, well, only a few points clear of playoff one, Champions playoffs. So yeah, that's how tight it all is, and they're still not scoring much. Most remarkable thing was maybe that both goalkeepers were the third goalkeepers of their respective squads at the beginning of the season. It's still quite remarkable that Standard had not won against KV Kortrijk at Sclesien since 2020. So yeah, a good 4 years. And at Kortrijk, I guess, again, also not that much to say, but the least we can say is that there clearly has not been a new manager bounce, with Yves van der Hagen getting only 1 point out of the 9 possible, which make their complete full streak now as well, make it a 1 point out of the last 5 games. Always encouraging as well if your manager... I think it's taken out of context. Unfortunately, I haven't actually watched the interview, but like if your manager says like, it can only get better from here because we're losing all the games. Yeah, okay. Actually, there's not that much to take out of context there, but I suppose it might have been meant more in like a cynical way and a bit funny way instead of a serious comment. But regardless of that, still not a thing you want to hear from your manager.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, actually, because I was going to ask you what you made of some of his post-match comments, which were pretty overwhelmingly depressing. You could kind of feel the negative energy emanating off him, and I did think, geez, that's got to rub off in the squad. You know, he's giving the sense of a man who feels a bit weary already, only 3 matches into his third spell, of course, is T1 at the club. Yeah, he was also talking as well about, their lack of inability to kind of take their chances, which again is not telling us or anyone else anything that they already know, saying that sometimes you just need someone who can finish it off. Which brings me to the fact that obviously they probably need a striker. You would, urge them to try and find one this window, but that's not who they've brought in. They are bringing in Karim Derman from Lommel, of course, the midfielder, someone they've had their eye on for a little while, apparently. That's happened today. But yeah, I would certainly hope that they might think about and would urge them to think about bringing in a striker to underline Yves' point. Conversely, Ivan Leko at Standard, of course, he had a little bit of negativity himself, and he was talking generally about their ongoing struggles this season, saying it's been really difficult this season. And to be honest, I can't laugh about any of it. So his counterpart at Standard is not enjoying himself too much, unsurprisingly either. I know we've talked a lot about Standard kind of struggling to score goals, Joris. I mean, only 13. Anybody scoring that amount of goals would normally be deep in relegation trouble. Of course, they're not. They're keeping their head above water, and they've managed to gather 28 points on the basis of 13 goals, which says probably more about their defence being by far probably the strongest part of the side. But I still find that remarkable.
Yeah, completely does not make any sense. Yeah, they could in theory still get sucked in again, of course, but it's looking good now, at least for relegation. And yeah, only 3 points behind Gent in sixth place now at the moment, so the hunt might be on as well.
Yeah, they're managing to pick up just enough points in games to kind of keep them ahead of sides as well, which is extraordinary. And as we've obviously said, can they keep doing that? Because obviously, if they can't, then they will definitely get sucked in. But yeah, I kind of a little salute to Ivan Leko and the work that he's doing there, because although Standard are a difficult watch, as we've been saying for the last 2 or 3 weeks. I think to be in that position, all things considered, I think he's doing as good a job as can be expected there, and we've said that about other coaches as well. So, yeah, I felt the need to say something positive about Standard this week, so I'll underline that.
They also have a very nice stat line in their game: 7-1, 7 drawn, and 7 losses. That's also nice.
All the sevens, yeah. And for those of you, with an eagle eye for detail, that's the 777 connection there, which, although it's no longer official anymore, seems to haunt them in a different way. Yeah, very nice, very nice. Speaking of positive things, Felix Mazu. Felix Mazu St Truden went to Hit-Coupier this weekend to play Westerlo. Managed to come away with all 3 points, winning by 2-1. Didier Lamkelzee is back in Belgium, everybody. We saw, what did we see, 25 minutes from him this weekend, and he actually played quite well. I did find it quite amusing, Joris, that he was looking for the ball every time that St Truden had possession, even when he had no right really to be passed the ball. I could see him gesturing, pass it to me, give it to me. So that I'm the man, I want to make it all happen, hasn't gone away. But yeah, he had a positive contribution to make this weekend. St Truden's first win in 8 in the league. They really, really needed that. I think they didn't. Gives them a little bit of light between them and Kortrijk, and definitely sucks Westerlo in, who now only have 1 win in their last 7.
Yeah, and one in their last 6 league games, but yes, Westerlo are in deep shit, is how I had put it in a very nice way. So pardon my French there, but definitely pulled into the mud. The positive for Westerlo is still they're creating a lot. Like also like their expected points and expected goals. All these stats are actually shooting them higher. They should be able to get out of this based on those stats quite easily. But currently they're actually indeed in because of this longer streak, winless streak, are indeed in the relegation zone, in the relegation playoff, or virtually at least. And this also goes for this game, I guess. Actually, that's all summarizing this game. Still creating quite a lot. Should have scored more than one, but very efficient and still conceding quite easily. Especially that second goal. Initially, the cross got blocked, but after that, no one seems to have been paying attention. That was not great defending. It of course does not help for them now to have Vuskovic suspended as well, which the referee had to take a stance there, I guess. Had to play a role after the game. Vuskovic got initially a yellow card, which was his fifth yellow card anyway, so it was anyway a suspension. Would have anyway been suspension, but even later it changed to a direct red card. Yeah, it does not help to lose arguably your best player of the season to such thing. Even though it's very understandable, to be honest, with Visser's performance at referee. At least I can understand. I don't know, of course, what he said, so obviously it could be that it's really too much, and in that case, fair enough. But if the time wasting of Sint-Truiden was at times not taken care of by the refereeing. It often happens, of course, so if it's really a reason to be that angry, that's up for debate, I guess. But nonetheless, stupid yellow and red card afterwards, and not good news for them in the next game. But most remarkable moment of the game was arguably as well had nothing to do with Lamkelzee, although there is also one while he was not on the pitch yet, but with Ferrari's goal, scoring just from 45 meters out, probably the farthest out this season in Belgium. I'm not completely sure. Didn't rewatch all the goals yet, but I think it could be. Catching Van Langendonk too far out of his cage. And then the Lamkelzee moment was actually at the second goal, while he was still at the sidelines, ready to get subbed on. Mazu, Mazu was the first person to celebrate with Lamkelzee after that goal, or the other way around. But Mazu was the one celebrating for sure. Much needed win for Sint-Truiden, of course, against now definitely a straight competitor in their second away win of the season only as well.
Yeah, I think results at the bottom of the table were quite interesting this weekend. I thought, that St-Truiden win, and obviously Circle picking up 3 points again this weekend have done both Kortrijk and Beerschot no favours at all, and have isolated them even further. They were already deep in trouble, but that water's got a lot hotter certainly after this weekend. Yeah, the red card was an interesting one. Aside from being very, very amusing, of course, there's new regulations in place now, isn't there, where in theory only really club captains are allowed to approach and address referees. So anybody saying anything, let alone something as agricultural as Vuskovic's language, is going to get you into trouble. My favourite bit about that was actually Visser's face. He didn't even make really any eye contact with Vuskovic. The red card came out and he was looking off into the middle distance. It was a funny moment, but everybody knows that of all the referees in Belgium, Laurens Visser is still my favourite because he remains the most entertaining all round, and that's not necessarily to do with his refereeing qualities on the pitch, but at least we're getting some entertainment from a referee. Let's move on to talking a little bit detail about your side this weekend, Joris. Genk managing to win 2-0 against Chris Coleman's Leuven, making it a little bit hard for themselves, of course, going down to 10 men after, I think it was 6 minutes, wasn't it? But plenty of positives for you to talk about in detail, not least the fact I think it's the 10th home win in a row across all competitions, and in the league anyway, 31 points out of a possible 33 at home. over the last few months, which is, fortress-like territory. So I suppose if you can replicate that away from home, the title's home and dry.
Yeah, mathematically that's a certainty, of course, but sadly that's so far not the case. But that's the challenge and the task I think I also outlined in our previous episodes in the halfway episodes. Well, indeed, out of the 11 games, they won 10 at home. After the 11 home games, of course. Bender's 2 clean sheets to start 2025 as well. He will get a chance again against Club Brugge in the cup next. Tomorrow as we're recording, and then afterwards we will see. That's also still something brewing there. Because of a Van Kombrugge injury or a slight injury, slight knock at his, as we know, week back already from previous injuries. At the wrong time for him for sure. Smets got a first red card, 19 minutes with 10 men, and still managing to both keep a clean sheet and winning the game, scoring. So they decided to make it a bit of a team building rather than what's was supposed to be, let's say, on paper, a relatively easy home win. They did make it difficult, and it's I mean, Leuven definitely could have scored in this game. That was not a topic. Yeah, the fun part on Leuven, well, fun is like. In Sports Late Nights, the highlight program on Flemish TV, it was mentioned that Genk was playing already their second game of the season of 2025. I mean, of the calendar year, but that was not the case for Leuven, who played their first game. I'm still wondering who played against Club Brugge last week in the cup, but yeah, well, that was a great start of the highlight program again in Belgium, and shows shows maybe also a little bit too much disinterest in the league, to be honest, in the league and anything around. But okay, let's say it was just a lapsus to start the year. That's can be covered, but yeah. And of course, 2 penalties cost in a few days as well by Kurucay, both in that cup game against Club Brugge and the first penalty here against Genk. Quite silly challenges, late challenges. And well, it goes for both games actually. They really had their chances, but they didn't take them. A good penders and some defenders really defending the line really well from Genk. In this case, at Club Brugge, there were a few actual chances that they should have converted better as well. But that's a disappointing start of 2025 for them. Although, of course, against opponents they probably did not expect to, one, go through in the cup, and two, take any points off in the league. But given circumstances, I mean, you play 90 minutes literally with stoppage time against 10 men. Yeah, you should do better, I guess.
Yeah, Torsten Fink was kind of quite clear afterwards. He said we overcame the adversity well, and I'm pleased we managed to find solutions. That's the thing. I think this game kind of highlighted something we've been talking about for weeks now in relation to your side, and that is that both them, the Genkies and Club Brugge, are the only two sides, I think, that have the quality and depth in their squads to be able to utilise that, so that when they get themselves into awkward situations, they can draw on that to kind of get them out. What did you make of the red card? Did you think it was a red? I mean, was it a bit marginal? I've seen it a few times, and I can see it going either way. I'm not entirely convinced. There's a one-on-one opportunity there either, or that the goalkeeper isn't making the clearance at the same time. So I thought that was a marginal one.
It was, but I guess you can't really complain when it's given. I think against Kortrijk we had a case, I don't remember which defender it was, where it's a relatively similar case where it was a yellow. So, well, either that time looked more like a red card actually than this one maybe. But okay, you got away with one, you get this one. I mean, nothing to complain there. Yeah, it's you can debate if Hannah is probably technically a little bit behind the action, but almost at the same line. In running without the ball is always faster than with, of course. Or because there's no doubt that Ndri is faster than Hannah on regular if they would have a sprint contest, but with the ball at the feet is still different. Again, and being more inside, so closer to the goal, is it really taking away an all clear and obvious goal scoring opportunity? Yeah, you can argue about it, but I can understand it. There's also like this small question mark if like there was a slight pull from Ndri. Was that a initial foul on Smith before he made the challenge? Well, the challenge itself was stupid. That's the main thing. And yeah, it seems to have been enough as well. He only got one conditional one, now extra suspension. So yeah, that's it. You can give it. I mean, I was not completely surprised seeing it that it was given, even though there are circumstances that could also have argued for yellow. But yeah, you win some, you lose some. Also, in this case, it's like I just have proven.
Yep. And in this case, winning some was what happened. That was the end result of the game, which is all that matters, I suppose, from Genk's point of view. And just on Penders briefly, would you like to see him keep his place for the rest of the season?
I think I voiced that quite clearly in the halfway episode. So yeah, either that or, which I would not be surprised, but okay, if he stays now, then that first position, first goalkeeper position, might be his. It might be just in time to not loan him out and get a third option in. Yeah, nothing against the person Van Krombrugge, but on the as a goalkeeper this season, he hasn't convinced me. The overhanging thing is, of course, that Penders is actually leaving with 100% certainty this summer, maybe 99% certainty if they could. I don't know if that's something that's on the cards, but loan him back for one season next season. Yeah, that anyway, that's not set in stone. That would happen. Yeah. So would you want to let him play and let him make the mistakes a young goalkeeper anyway, also as talented as he might be, he will make and has made already as well in the few games he had in the reverse fixture against Lure, for example. Yeah, there were some mistakes there, but he looks full of confidence, and we'll see. Fink says that he will decide after the game against Club Brugge, which is like it's still a very different beast away from home. Probably the most difficult situation he'll get in Belgian football. Yeah, in the cup. So after that, we will see if he gets through with it. Maybe it's also good for this whole situation to not completely explode yet, but like that Van Krombrugge actually got that slight injury to get. So there's always something to hide behind for that. Van Krombrugge, of course, also already signed the complicating matters a little more. In combination with Penders definitely leaving, Van Krombrugge had signed actually a new contract, a longer contract earlier in the season. So yeah, we don't know what promises have been made to both of them, to be honest, so to really make comments there. But if Penders keeps performing well, I don't see a reason to take him out at the moment. Yeah. So yes. Personally, yes.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Definitely something to keep an eye on. I mean, you mentioned the cup. Obviously, since the last episode, your side beat local rivals St Truden convincingly 4-0 in the cup to set up a two-leg semi-final against Club Brugge, the first leg of which obviously is in the next few days. We will probably know the result of that by the time you get to hear this episode, listeners. Of course, the title battle between Genk and Club, which is shaping up at the moment. Of course, there's not very much in it at all at the moment. These two sides are going to be as sick as the sight of each other by the end of the season, aren't they, Joris? Because that's four meetings before the end of the season. The two cup semi games, and there will be a further two in the playoffs as well. So, there's a lot to happen between those two sides before the end of the season. A little caveat, I suppose, just before we move on, we shouldn't completely rule out Union Saint-Gilloise in the title conversation quite yet. There is a long way to go, including points halving as well, and they have been improving, a fair bit in recent weeks. So they are still very much part of this conversation, I think, even if it seems a bit peripheral at the moment. Speaking of Union Saint-Gilloise, they got another 3 points this weekend, Joris. They went to Charleroi in the Stade du Pays, in a game which probably there's more to say about what happened off the pitch rather than on it. I'm going to call this game the Boomerang effect. It's the perfect example of what happens when your fans decide to light some flares and disrupt a game when your own side are winning the game, causing such a disruption and such a stoppage in the game that you end up losing the game. Credit to Union Saint-Gilloise, by the way. They did turn the game around. They played their own part, but how ludicrous is it that your own fans can introduce such a disruptive factor to their own team when they're winning, and in the end, cause a boomerang effect?
Well, it has happened so often lately, specifically, that I'm actually like, should we just actually ignore it and move on and basically censor these fans, and then like the thrill gets away, and then like maybe it's a very much naive, well, no, for sure it's a very naive scenario I'm painting here, but like, I don't know, I've maybe it's because I'm out of ideas of like, this is ludicrous obviously, but like I'm I, I would seriously consider, I mean, at least in all the images and the highlights and all, like, don't pay any attention to it. Maybe just like, with little children, it's also sometimes a case like you need to let them do, like they want attention, okay, to scream for it. Sometimes it's better to not give it to them, and that might be more difficult, obviously, because even if you do that, people in the stadium still see it. So, I mean, this is not a very serious comment, but still, there might be there's something in there that I don't want to talk too much about it, but it was stupid. Point.
Yeah, wild for me. I think it's very interesting this, because Charleroi were pretty angry about it afterwards. In fact, so much so that today, I think it is, they confirmed that they're banning access to two of their ultra groups for tickets for their next away fixture against Ghent this weekend. So they're trying to make a point, and I think are going to be looking at who might be denied access beyond that fixture as well. Because they know that it's not good. Charleroi, by the way, I've never beaten Union Saint-Gilloise since Union returned to the top flight as well, which is an interesting statistic if you didn't know about that one, everybody. But yeah, Union managing to get the win in the end, courtesy of Alessio Castro-Montes and Mr. Franjo Ivanovic, who's still producing the goods.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, but I could be, I'm looking at that right now. It's even all wins for Union against Charleroi since they came back. So not even getting any points out of these games. On Union, Lapouzin, Lazare, that might also be news in the margin of the game, that like they might be on the way out. Because of that's more whispers and rumors than anything else, maybe. But I think there are reasons to believe them, like the disciplinary issues again coming up, and also some issues that actually are of more of a bigger societal or impact than footballing only on the football pitch, that need to be taken care of, and you seem to be tired of it. Understandably, I guess if it's a repeat, not a first repeat even of events. but definitely a brilliant goal from Ivanovic. Definitely for that second and to win it. But potentially, maybe not the biggest question marks against him this game, but potentially really Kone's positioning was not ideal there as well as a goalkeeper. Not his biggest mistake, mind you. That's what was my main point for Charleroi in this game as well. Actually, I'm a big fan of him. Actually, as you also could have heard again in this episode, halfway episode, I think. But yeah, what did he do in 1 minute? Like he gave away a corner. Like he got very lucky that his defender could still manage to put it in a corner, and then on that corner he completely misses the ball and hits it against his own defender, leaving it up in the air, and Castro Montes making the best out of that situation for Union and bringing them back in the game, because Charleroi were actually, at least specifically in the first half, playing quite well. Second half, yeah, they were not completely out of the game either, but they might not have created as much. But they did throw away that game, partially maybe also indeed because of the fans' behavior. Difficult to quantify that, of course, but it's possible. And to come back to something you mentioned before we moved to this game, I guess I warned to the listeners. I warned these guys, both Scott and Ben, to say anything about a title race like before the playoffs. You can't say anything now. But yes, okay, you can probably start to say like Genk and Club Brugge are quite certain of participation in playoff in the Champions playoffs, which for Club Brugge you probably could have said like before the season. For Genk, it always hangs a bit in the balance, but also for a while now since the season is going this way for them. But apart from that, if you say Union is in there, I understand. I also do it. I also see them as a third horse at the moment. But they were actually also only now taking over from both Antwerp and Anderlecht in that position. It's still a winter transfer window. Busy levels performance levels can decrease and increase. Suddenly, there might be so many factors, like always in football. But it's a bit early for me still to only narrow it down to 2 or 3 title contenders. But obviously, they have a good bonus now, a good margin now for the rest of the season to go towards these Champions playoffs in a bit more relaxed fashion. But they still have a few good games amongst them, indeed.
Yeah, and speaking of good games, there was quite a good game at the Olympisch Stadion in the big Antwerp derby, which finished 1-1 between Beerschot and Antwerp. Another game that saw some feisty fan action, which we won't dwell on too much. I did find it rather depressing seeing the sight of Jonas de Rock heading over to his own fans in the corner and telling them to kind of calm down and keep the head when there were some flares being thrown, which incidentally landed near some families in the hospitality VIP section, right beside the media section as well, very close to some media laptops. We won't dwell on that too much, but we're seeing far too much of that. But this game was kind of packed with incident. It was great to see the Olympisch Stadion almost full for a change, and rocking most part for the majority of the game with a pretty decent atmosphere. I would advise Beerschot fans perhaps to bring that atmosphere a bit more often to home games if they can and get out in a bit more numbers. Maybe that will influence their point intake if they can do that, because their team did respond pretty positively to that support, I think. But yeah, this game gave us disallowed goals, missed penalties, and should Beerschot have won the game?
They probably should have, yes. If one team had to win this game, it most likely was them, indeed. But nonetheless, I guess a few positives. They played quite well. 7th consecutive home game that they haven't lost. There's way too many draws in there, though. That's immediately going through the issues. If there would have been 1, 2, 3, 2 or 3, one might not have been enough, but 2 or 3 wins instead of draws, the world would have looked a little bit brighter. Still dire, but a little bit brighter. they missed 3 out of their 4 penalties this season. Genk also sometimes has issues with penalties, but this doesn't come close to what is happening here. 3 out of 4. That's almost the opposite of what a penalty statistic in expected goals is. That's not great. They did avoid a 6th derby loss in a row, though. That's, I guess, a half positive for them again, but should have probably won. And have to admit, second goal, so that second goal, disallowed goal they made, I'm not sure if Lammers is just in time or not, but I guess I'll trust the referees on this one, and I believe as soon as he got like one finger on the ball, that it's already in his possession, so that makes it more likely. If not, then definitely, by former standards, I'm sure this would never been disallowed. But maybe with the current regulations, that's quite clear. So be it. They still had plenty of chances to win it, especially at the end of the game as well. A few really, both lucky but also good saves from Lammers as well, to deny a few Beerschot players, and just poor finishing as well, though, especially on the rebound. For Antwerp, then, a bit of a disappointment after, actually, like, I even call it, maybe it's too much, it's too big a word, a new uppercut. After actually having that really convincing cup win, in the end, cup win against Union 5-1, biggest defeat of Union this season, I'm assuming. Another uppercut in the sense of, like, they still only won 1 of their last 7 league games. So at the moment, and imagine, like, yes, they're only now being overtaken. If they would have won a few of those 7 games, that also would have been would have meant a world of difference for them. In the other opposite challenge on the right side of the classification. And back on the penalty as well. So that's 3 out of 4 penalties missed for Beerschot, but also Lommel saving 3 out of 5 penalties that he got against this season, which is very impressive. Also, almost reversing that expected goals statistic.
That's almost in Davy Roof territory for those of you who like your eye for detail. Ghent goalkeeper Davy Roof is a bit of a penalty whiz, and certainly has a reputation for being very strong in that area, so he's getting a run for his money. I thought Joris de Rock's comments after this game were quite interesting. I think he was disappointed. He actually did say that, Antwerp weren't ready for this game, and I think what he meant was they weren't up for it enough from the kickoff. Not that they weren't, properly prepared for it, but just that they didn't meet the same levels of intensity. Toby Alderweireld obviously have some interesting comments about the state of the pitch, which we'll say no more about because we've had plenty to say about it ourselves. And talking about how it's not conducive to kind of playing good football, and funnily enough, on certainly one of the disallowed goals, the state of the pitch played a direct part in that, causing a player to slip, giving that opportunity, which was quite amusing, I thought. Dirk Kuyt, on the other hand, very frustrated not to get the win, because of course Beerschot haven't beaten Antwerp in like about 1,000 years now, in any incarnation. So I think getting reasonably close like they did this weekend and putting in probably one of their better performances of the entire season, I think to not get a real reward for that, I think was definitely frustrated about that. Antwerp ultimately getting a little bit lucky, obviously, with the free kick and taking a point away, which they will take every day of the week, considering how they played. Moving on to Dender and Genk, which there's very little to say about because it was 0-0 and it wasn't even an entertaining 0-0. Absolutely unremarkable. Couple of things for me, I suppose, are we know about Ghent's striking issues. We've spoke about Max Dean's injury. Bringing a striker in is absolutely the priority and is consuming every waking hour the sporting department has there at the moment. Who it's going to be, we don't know. They have a long list. Is it Dante van Zeer? Everybody knows him well in Belgium. Is it somebody else? There is talk of them only wanting to spend around 4 million as a ceiling, even though they could spend more if they wanted to. Andre Gudjonsson, still not convincing. 3 goals and 30 appearances this season across all competitions, with only 8 starts thrown in there. So I think, I think somebody will be coming in before the window closes. That's for sure. Dender, I think, was it just today, Joris? It was confirmed the record outgoing transfer, 400,000. Jordi Saladio is away to Israel.
Good for him. Although I'm not sure if I want to play there at the moment, but that's let's not dive into that again. But it was like, of course, against Gent that they were playing, not against Genk. Scott also made a mistake there in the beginning, but yet another point for them. That's good for them. Definitely, missed a chance to move even higher up on the table, of course, and putting Gent under even more pressure than they already are. We'll get to that. So for Denver, that was good, even though they actually maybe deserved to win this game. But if anyone deserved to win this game, that's another question mark to be put there. There was not a great game. Again, also not a great pitch, which better than that from Beerschot, for sure. Better than Kiel, but still. For Gent, a few stats, I guess. Not only stats, but just a few things to say. More like you highlighted it again, scoring issues. 10 goals in 11 away games so far. Also 14 points out of possible 33 in away games, which is not really great, especially if you don't have a good home form, because that's more or less what differentiates Genk and Gent at the moment. Outside of the one letter, I think Genk has very similar away record, but of course, make up for that. But not to dwell on that, there was a debut for Leonardo da Silva Lopes, of course, was worth mentioning. Almost got an assist as well. That was just not enough stretch on. Was it Handelman, I believe, to put it in? Pressure on Franke indeed rising still. Like there are. We already mentioned Van Zijl is a strong rumor. Like, it might also be that it's actually more what I've the rumors I've heard is speculation. They're all speculative. Is that which is not so far-fetched, is that actually it's more or less done, that deal, but that Franken actually wants a different striker. And what makes it more realistic that this happens is that, of course, they work together at Mechelen already, and that relationship did not really, well, at least Van Zijl didn't really get many chances from Franke, so that wasn't a good partnership at the time. Doesn't need to vote for a potential new time, of course, but could be a reason why there's still no new striker. But and if the ceiling is 4 million, I believe that target would be quite difficult to get anyway. But who knows what to believe these days? But they do definitely need to reinforce that department.
Yeah, again, I think it's deja vu with Ghent. It's been a long day. Even we still make those mistakes. Even us, even I do still after long days. It's an interesting one, that, because I think, I was going to ask you how you felt about the pressure on Vranken. I've been alluding to it over the last few weeks. I think it's kind of there, even though people aren't talking about it. I feel it's much nearer the surface than you would imagine, and I base that more on the fact that there's a sense of no real improvement at the moment, and how long do you give it? I think this window could could be crucial in that decision as far as his position is concerned as well. So we'll need to wait and see. But yeah, a lot of what ifs with the Buffaloes at the moment. The big game of the weekend for many, and rightly so, one of the biggest fixtures obviously in the Belgian calendar, Anderlecht against Club Brugge, the two most successful club sides, historically speaking anyway, in Belgium, meeting in Brussels. Anderlecht losing convincingly 3-0 to Club Brugge, and a lot of questions of an Anderlecht nature for you, from me anyway this week, Joris. Bruges obviously managing to win the game without even playing, that well by their standards, just being very efficient, and a lot of chat in fan circles about, I did hear the phrase men against boys used more than once this weekend by various people. Anderlecht, by the way, worst defeat at home to club since 1993, I think. And they've only won one of their last 14, I think, against club as well. So, their record in this fixture against their rivals there is probably a source of concern. But what I want to ask you specifically about Anderlecht was, does this result sort of underline maybe where they are in their cycle at the moment? Because though they're sitting in a generally kind of okay place in the league, which gives the impression of some progress, are they in that space where we can seriously consider them a title challenger anytime soon? Let alone this season, because their record against the top sides, particularly Club and Genk this season, has been poor.
Like I said, this season they're only 1 point behind Union, so at least in theory, there's something happening. In there, it's happening too late. Maybe things should have been happening before this weekend already. They also had an unconvincing but still win against Beerschot in the cup before this, where they got away with it. Maybe you could even say. Because of the opponent being Beerschot and the pitch and everything else, but nonetheless, they are actually reinforcing a bit. They got Huerta now officially. There are so many names. They're at least trying to look busy, and I think they are busy as well. That there's still no new defender is one of the issues that actually already bit him here, because they have their issues in center defense, of course, but now also both left backs were out, so the young Mamar got a starting debut, or even a full debut in his case, I think, and also Lapage, got a first start in the league. Not ideal to have to do that, more or less, against your biggest rivals. So they definitely have still that excuse of injuries, but they also are not equipped to really to still have some decent quality behind these injuries to cover for these injuries at the moment. And I'm not putting that on the youth. I mean, they both played well. It's an unfair task to be in this game for them, but they played okay. They were not the issue here even. So if the boys to men was referring to that, I don't think that necessarily made the thing. But if it's more about the physicality of the play of the game, it's known that Anderlecht, especially in midfield, is missing that. Also, the Donker is not bringing that. He's supposed to bring that part of his game, at least, regardless of then being maybe a good leader or anything else. That regardless of all those skills and qualities, his and well, in the sense, if he even is, without questioning even those things, but just that part of his game, he should have always brought. But it's not happening. It was staggering how free Jutgla was there to head the ball in. Throughout the whole action there, even he was free. No one was marking him for his first goal, and his second goal of the season. He immediately made a third one as well to make matters worse for Anderlecht. But just they are lacking a lot. I don't think they actually will play a role. Maybe if they can in some games improve, but they might be a bit too far behind, and it might be a bit too much of an ask, especially if you indeed look at how the bigger games are going at the moment. But okay, with the caveat, of course, again, they look busy. So maybe if they do get a few good reinforcements, if they get some reinforcements in, that could make the world of difference again as well for them. But everything needs to click really, really soon. And it's not looking likely that this will happen. But there are some areas they need to reinforce. They are reinforcing, some people coming back. But yeah, on the other hand, can you do some of those injuries? You can also say you could more or less have predicted that maybe, so that there was no plan B. Is worrying, of course. There is a new sportive director now in comparison. Maybe that does make a change, a difference already as well. But now also adding the injury list is Amuzu, of course. 15 minutes down, that was not a good sight. Throughout the whole break, he was still being taken care of on the pitch. But yeah, and Dolberg as well, but I believe that's most likely a smaller injury, so I don't think that will be a major impact for the rest of the season. But yeah, they're lacking in a few key areas, and they might fill some of those gaps. But it's unrealistic, at least for this season, to do that. We also see how fast it can go, though, of course. So it doesn't mean anything for even next season or in 2 seasons. It all depends on all the action that is happening in the transfer window.
Yeah, Ukla, I had a very good game, obviously, getting a couple of goals, and I thought that was interesting because our Ben was saying just over the last couple of weeks he's been talking about how he's not had the greatest season. He's fallen out of favour a little bit. Although his actual performances haven't been too bad, he just hasn't, there's not been the goals output, but he certainly brought that this weekend. There was also some peripheral chat as well that I found quite interesting amongst some of the fan bases around worries about the age of Anderlecht's back line and the youth there potentially being a factor in this result, which I wasn't convinced by, because actually when you look at clubs' lineup, you've got Solis and Talbi and Saba and Yashari, who are all of similar ages to that Anderlecht back line. So the youth argument really for me wasn't really a factor in why they lost this game, although I can see why that did in retrospect, and hindsight is a wonderful thing, did bother Anderlecht fans. But yeah, quite a few questions around them and how things have been in the big fixtures for them this season after that convincing defeat. Speaking of defeats, Mechelen went to the Ambridal this weekend, Joris, and lost 1-0 to Ferdinand Feldhofer's Cercle Brugge. And Mechelen now are on Besnik Kazi's longest winless streak. Winless in 6 under him, which should be a bit of a worry, I suppose. We've been talking about their form on and off kind of quite a bit. 2 new starters, 2 newcomers. Frederick Hammer started the game, as did centre-half Stephen Welsh, who looks like he's going to have to get up to speed with Belgian football pretty quickly. I thought he put in a good shift, but he looked like a man who thought, okay, hello, I'm in a different footballing culture here, and my word, this is physical. That's what I was getting from his body language. And he was slightly at fault, actually, I thought, for the goal. He allowed Felipe Augusto to get much the better of him for that bullet of a header for the goal that ultimately won the game. Cercle out of the relegation zone. Good start for Ferdinand Feldhofer, undefeated. Objective achieved for the moment, I suppose, and a pretty decent all-round performance from them. Solid, aggressive, and imposing. Besnik Kazi, I think, has a lot on his plate, really. they created very little, Mechelen, and their form is just a bit of a worry. I suppose they will hope that the window will be successful for them and will settle things down, because there's no doubt about it, because of the combination of results this weekend, they are very much getting sucked into something. Only 4 points themselves now above that danger zone.
Yeah, I'm already sorry for Club Brugge fans as well. We didn't really talk much about them. It was a clinical victory, so it would have been more exciting to talk more about that game, but the game was not good enough for both sides there, I suppose. But yeah, on Cercle, Mechelen indeed. Unbeaten since Veldhoven, as you say, said the last 5 games. They have played either ended at 1-1 or 1-0. So yeah, that's for the betting people around in our audience. Similar to Mechelen as well. Actually, they lost 4 games, ended in 1-1, 1-0, or 0-0. So I guess you could have betted. Also, could have done this at the first game of the weekend between Standard and Kortrijk, but on a low-scoring game, you definitely could have. That would have been a safe bet. On Cercle, further, they now scored 8 goals on set pieces, which is a good portion of their goals. Which is no coincidence as well. They have had 131 corners so far, which is the most of the league. Of course, this has not only to do with Veldhoven, also under Muslic. They tried to get up high on the pitch and scoring high on those parameters. But they're taking a few more wins now and a lot less losses, at least, and now are officially out of the relegation playoffs for the first time since we can remember this season. I suppose I think the start of the season might have been just about good enough, but it was very quickly that they sunk in there. And that's worrying for some other sides. You already mentioned it, Beerschot and Kortrijk. Both those sides, it really looks like they are going to be the last 2, at least to start the relegation playoffs, and that they can't escape it anymore. But for the other 2 spots, there is a lot to say still. Margins are very narrow, as you mentioned, for Mechelen. It may be good that they still didn't get sucked in despite this whole negative streak. They need to score more again. The efficiency, it looked like it was a bit in the past, but it seems to come back as well. Even though, in this particular game, they just didn't play that well anyway, I guess. But they still could have scored very early on, for example. But yeah, just not enough at the moment. And also, of course, they have had a lot of injuries. Some of them to be expected, given players' unfortunate injury histories, but some of them also, just a bit of a misfortune. But what's your take on that, on the situation at Mechelen? Do you think they will be fine?
I think it's pretty touch and go at the moment. I mean, I was alluding there to the fact that I think this winter transfer window is going to have probably the biggest say in which way things are going to go, particularly for Besnik Haze, I think. He was quite clear coming into this window, wasn't he, as he always is, because he's very vocal about these things, about where he felt the club had gone wrong in some mistakes over the summer. Some things didn't work out, needed to be corrected with this window. And I think if they can be, then I think they will be okay. I think if they don't pick up a couple of wins over the next month, then I think he'll be under a lot of pressure, regardless of what happens in the window, because they're not yeah, they're not creating too much at the moment either. For a little period, even when they weren't picking up points, they were still creating, but not necessarily taking those chances. I think they're now, the chance creation starting to drop off a little bit as well. So I think the worries generally are multiplying a little bit for them. And yeah, hopefully the window will redress some of that. That's for sure. We will see. It's certainly something that keeps me awake at nights.
Yeah, I can imagine. Also, I think they need to pick up the points in the right games as well. They still have a few the games against bottom sides, so they don't even need to win that many games, but they're just the right ones. And they play against Genk, who is a bit less impressive away from home so far, and has a particularly bad record on at KV Mechelen as well. So next week, and so who knows.
Yeah, the wheel has to turn at some point. Hopefully, it's in the right direction. If you're of a Mechelen persuasion. Before we go, we should touch on Matchday 17, of course, in the Challenger Pro League, which was pretty truncated this weekend. Joris, the weather, as we were saying at the beginning, put pay to a number of fixtures which were postponed because of that. But some games did take place. We did get some action. We saw Zulte Waregem coming from 2 goals behind to get the 3 points against Patro Eisden. Beveren drew 0-0 with Raal. Molenbeek managed to beat RFC Liège 2-1, and the rest of the programme was killed by the weather. Lokeren, Eupen, Lommel and Frank Baran and Anderlecht Futures and Young Genk all falling foul of the weather. They will obviously be rearranged and played at some point soon once the calendar manager is able to get their head around that. So in terms of the bigger picture, Zulte are still top, but the good news for them is they've extended their lead now to 6 points because of the way things have worked out. They still have the top scorer in Jelle Vossen, and Raal's form is still on point, only 1 defeat in the last 11 for them. So although they lost a little bit of ground on Zulte, that 1 defeat in that 11, by the way, was against Zulte, funnily enough, while we're talking about them. And the other bit of news out of the Challenger Pro League was a bit of biggish news today. It was confirmed that Steve Bold has resigned from his position as T1 at Lommel. We don't know who's coming in yet. This was only confirmed this morning. And the decision was only taken over the weekend, so we don't know what's going to happen there. Perhaps not a massive surprise, that really, Joris. I think there'd been a feeling in some parts that Steve Bold was maybe on borrowed time a little bit at Lommel, because they have been having a frustrating season, and I know their fans are definitely frustrated, and they seem to be kind of falling out of some of those promotion conversations, certainly for this season anyway.
Yeah, I won't comment too much on it because, well, all I know so far is that he resigned for personal reasons. So yeah, obviously this might have been helped by these circumstances you've been talking about, and the sportive things going a different way as well. But then they hoped for and expected. But yeah, I can't really comment much on that. I'll refrain from that as well. But nonetheless, a really interesting weekend, despite the few games. As Scott mentioned, if La Louvière actually would have won that game against Zulte Waregem, then they would be equal on points already as well. So it's more like the run of Zulte Waregem, testament to that. Similar to as in the Pro League, actually, I guess, to make the quick jump there as well, where Genk have dropped off a little bit, but still are actually on a quite good run of form results-wise. But Club Brugge has now won 9 of their last 11 games and drew the other 2. With such streaks, of course, you catch up. As you also can see, that now the gap has indeed become a bit bigger with the next sides for the moment. Anyway, to jump back to the Challenger Pro League and the topic at hand. Zulte Waregem coming back from 0-2 against Patro Eisden to win it 3-2. Very important victory. And of course, who says Patrick has also has to mention Stan again. There were some incidents, but potentially similarly towards what I silly enough proposed for the fire pyro fans. Maybe we should not give too much attention to those shenanigans anymore either, but we just can't completely ignore it. So I have to mention it. But yeah, that's the figure says that is sort of an interesting one. Let's put it that way, and I hope it's that's actually a mild way to say it.
Yeah, well, that gives me an opportunity to enlighten anybody who might not be aware of that situation with Patro T1 Stein. And this weekend, he did refuse to shake hands with Zilta T1 Sven Vandenbroek. And the reason for this goes back to earlier in the season when Vandenbroek apparently damaged some property at Patro's ground, and there is apparently some bad feeling around this, and that led to Stein and obviously refusing to shake his hand. Never a man free of drama is Stein. We will say that much. That's for sure. That's what all of that was about. If you hadn't heard what had happened there, causing a bit of a stoosie. Yeah, I suspect he was also a little bit pissed off that his side had also just thrown away a 2-goal lead. That probably didn't help his general temperament, I would imagine, not on that full-time whistle. Well, that's it. That is another week in Belgian football. Thank you very much for joining me, Joris. It's been an absolute delight. What have you got coming up for yourself over the next week before we're all together again next?
Dinner quite soon, I believe. That's quite important. But also some games to follow, obviously, this week in the Cup again. So the first fixtures of the semi-finals, the first ties are being played. Club against Genk on Wednesday, and on Thursday it is Anderlecht against Antwerp. I believe that's the order, the right home and away order as well. So yeah, definitely some things to look forward to. And for the rest, life goes on. So as usual, I hope to be with a trident next week again, though.
As does the football. As Joris was saying, the action coming thick and fast. 2 big Cup semi-finals coming up this week, which we will have more on next week's episode. Speaking of which, if you do like what we do, please do consider leaving us a little review on your podcast platform of choice. That would be greatly appreciated. It helps new listeners find the Belgian Football Podcast. And if there are, this is a little shout out to Plymouth Argyle fans. Over the last few days, I've been touring the Plymouth Argyle fan pod scene, talking about their new T1, Mr. Miran Muslic, who me and the guys here at the podcast know very well, of course, from his time in Belgium. He is now taken up a new post at Argyle in England, so I've been spending a lot of time over the last few days in the company of Argyle fans, talking a lot about Miran's time at Circle in Belgium. So if there are any Argyle fans checking us out this week, which I suspect there are, welcome aboard the good ship BFP. You're very welcome here. You may also want to buy us a coffee as well. You can find the link to do that if you want on all of our socials. That goes a small way towards meeting some of our production costs here at the BFP. But have a great week, everybody, whatever you're up to. Enjoy the action over the next few days because it's coming thick and fast, as me and Joris were saying. Absolutely no let up, and we'll all be back with you very soon for another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.